But my thanks goes to Mr. Bhaskaran, a very old friend of mine from University of Bahasa in Malaysia. We go very, very long way back. In fact, we go back to the last century. You know? Correct? Yeah, we do. Last century, yeah. But anyway, I thank you, Bhaskaran, for inviting me to share some of my experiences as a diplomat in the Malaysian Foreign Service. Let me tell you, one of those things that I was in charge of very late in my career was MH17. Because suddenly one day we heard that this plane got shot down. And our plane, right, in Ukraine. So therefore it is our duty, because the citizens are all up in arms. They want to know who shot it down. Why did they shoot it down? And who should we blame? How do we take them to justice? All these kind of things. So I was asked to also be the head of the Malaysian team negotiating that in that group known as the Joint Investigation Team. The Joint Investigation Team is a group formed with Australia, because many Australians were killed, killed in that flight. Malaysia, of course, and the European Union. European Union was brought in because Netherlands was part of the EU. So it was a 4-country team whose job was to now try and find out who shot it, why they shot it, and what to do about it. But this is where I realized that negotiations are not always about what they are set out to be. But Malaysia's interest was to find out who shot it. The deed happened in Ukraine. It happened to be where the rebels are fighting. But along the way we found out that the missile system was from Russia. It was a system called Buk 1, BUK 1. Today the Russians are using a system called Buk 3, the third generation. Buk 1 is the older generation, but even that system was so very complex as we understood it, because we were given a demonstration. Absolutely no way that somebody thought it was enemy aircraft, correct? Because that machine tells you everything. It's a very highly sophisticated thing, but yet it happened. So the question is, do we go after the Ukrainians who obviously must have pressed the button because it was on their soil in Donbass region, or do we go after the Russians? What do you think? Do we go after the Russians because they gave the machinery to them? Or do we go after the Ukrainians because they somehow pressed the button? I don't know. I mean, the way I look at it, it's an instrument, right? It's like a knife. If I gave you a knife and you could have chosen to keep the knife and do something, but if you chose to go and use the knife to murder somebody, it's not that the person who gave you the knife is at fault, isn't it? The person who used it is at fault. So I thought we should be looking at the Ukrainians in that negotiation, right? To find out. But then little did I realize that the other 3 Europeans, in fact Australians, we call them Europeans as well, were not interested in justice. They were interested in pinning down Mr. Putin. Their interest was to use this as a facade, to pin it down on the Russians. And since Mr. Putin is the head of the government, so he's actually commander-in-chief. So theoretically speaking, the whole thing goes right up to him, because he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And the Russian armed forces delivered it, so therefore he's at fault. I mean, this is something that's so far-fetched. Don't you think so? But that's how negotiations sometimes shape up. And I found myself in that situation, but we had no choice because we were already part of the team. So we had to go and try and go right up to United Nations. We were working on a draft resolution. We went through the draft resolution, negotiated with the permanent council members, etc. But of course, at the end of the day, Russia is a permanent 5 member, and Russia, of course, vetoed the resolution. So that resolution, was one of those negotiations that I was involved very deeply, but knowing full well somewhere along the way that it was a negotiation that I did not feel that we should be part of, because it was not serving our interests. It was serving some other interests. But that is a boring kind of negotiation. Let me go to something else more interesting, another type of negotiation. This was in 1998. 10 years after I joined service. I had done some years in France. As Bhaskar mentioned, I speak French and all that. And I had also served in Bonn, because those days the Germanys were two Germanys, right? There's still the East Germany and West Germany. So our embassy was still in West Germany. It was in the town called Bonn. I was having a great time, 3 years, junior diplomat, But Germany was also great, I also just recently married. I had one young daughter. My wife was there with me. 3 years passed, and suddenly I got this one chilling telegram cable asking me to go and open a new embassy in Conakry, West Africa. I said, oh my God, where the heck is this place? Conakry. But of course I knew where was Conakry, So I had to go there, start the embassy. There's no embassy before. So I'm now learning from the first step. How is it to go and start an embassy? How does it happen? Because there are no textbooks that tell you how to start, open an embassy. There's nothing that over there, So I had to bring 3 men. The government won't allow me to bring more than 3, and myself. We have to go to, we have to put up the budget, costing, etc. And since we don't have anything, no bank, nothing, you got to operate by cash only for the first few months. We arrived in Conakry, and the first embassy was from room 908, Novotel, Conakry, my room. That was the first embassy. So I said the first cable saying the embassy of Malaysia has been established, room 908. So for 3 months we were, within 3 months I have to go and find a place and do all these things. But anyway, this is just to give you the sort of flavor to how I found myself in this place. So then, fast forward, we have moved out of the place, we have got a new building, staff, embassy, car, vehicles, all this kind of stuff. Still no ambassador yet. So I was at that time already a counselor. By the way, maybe I should tell you, diplomacy, diplomats, we have grades, right? We start, in case you do not know and if you're interested, let me just tell you this so that next time you also remember. The lowest diplomatic grade is known as third secretary. When you're promoted, you become second secretary. When you're promoted, you become first secretary, and then you become counselor. After you become counselor, then you're promoted to become minister counselor. After that, you become minister. The rank is called minister. In Malay, it's called mantri. After minister, then you become ambassador, right? Ambassador, you might have heard High Commissioner and Ambassador, right? He mentioned that I was High Commissioner in Singapore, I was Ambassador in Lebanon, etc. What is the difference? No difference at all. High Commissioners is how the Commonwealth countries call the ambassadors. When I'm posted to Singapore, because Singapore is a Commonwealth country, so we call our ambassadors High Commissioners. But if I were posted to Bangkok, I would have been called ambassador. So when I was in Lebanon, I was ambassador to Lebanon, I was High Commissioner to Cyprus at the same time. Same grade, same post. Now, having set up the embassy in Conakry, 1998, suddenly I get a call from the Deputy Secretary General of the Ministry, Dato Halim Ali at that time, who eventually became Chief Secretary to the government. Tan Sri, now retired of course. He called me one day, he said, hey Ilan, we have a serious problem. 3 of our peacekeepers have been kidnapped. At that time, there was a war going on in Sierra Leone. I'm not sure if do you all remember any of these things, or this all completely blur,
You reminded us.
In the 1990s, 1996, 1997, the government of Sierra Leone was overthrown by a rebel group called the Revolutionary United Front. I mean, all over Africa this is going on, and this was one of those things, West Africa is the back of the skull-like shape of Africa, right? On that side there. The president had been overthrown, and then the rebels were armed groups, they were fighting, and there was a ceasefire. The United Nations created a peacekeeping group known as UNAMSIL, and Malaysia is a very, a country that has participated a lot in peacekeeping operations, and we also had peacekeepers in this peacekeeping force known as UNAMSIL. We had a number of Malaysians in that force. One day, 3 of them had been kidnapped. I didn't know at that time. They were also kidnapped with a number of Indians, because India also had soldiers. Russians had soldiers and Africans as well. So they had kidnapped the Malaysians, the Kenyans, the Indians, and a sprinkling of Russians and all that. So the boss called me and said, Ilan, this is a serious problem, we got to negotiate. And for good measure, he has already told the Malaysian press, RTM at that time, that Kedutaan Besar Malaysia akan, what do you call that? Will rescue your people lah, basically, So I'm not sure if you, like I say, maybe you won't remember, but in the 1998, the news was already going on. Berita, 7:30, 8:30, Kedutaan Besar Malaysia di Conakry sedang berusaha tungkus lumus untuk membebaskan ahli-ahli pasukan pengaman kita yang telah diculik. What ahli kedutaan? There's only myself and plus a few other jokers there, and we got to go and negotiate this thing. And this is happening in Sierra Leone. I'm sitting in Conakry. Sierra Leone is another country, by the way. So I told my boss, look, Dato', I've already been sending him reports about all these things, that this is going to happen. I said, look, there's no way I can go to Freetown. Freetown is the capital, because it's a war zone. No flights, no commercial flights will go there. The only way to travel is by United Nations aircraft or helicopter. And the UN will not take a civilian. They will only take soldiers. Because civilians means insurance. UN doesn't pay insurance. But if you're a soldier, well, it's just too bad. Your job is to be killed, too bad. So soldiers, anytime can fly with them. Civilians like myself cannot fly. So now you have a situation, you've got to negotiate your way to release your 3 citizens, whom the press, the TV is already blaring out every day, Kedutaan Besar Malaysia sedang berusaha, untuk membebaskan dalam 1 hari 2 hari ini, something like that, And to make it worse, the RTM person actually interviewed me by telephone. I have no choice, got to say kita sedang berusaha and all that kind of stuff. So apparently my mom told me that, hey, your picture was on TV as well, And we heard you talking and all that, and everybody's feeling quite, relieved that Kedutaan Besar Malaysia sedang berusaha. So I was saying to myself, bloody hell, you can't be. I cannot go back and tell my boss that I couldn't do it, they're in a different country. You can't, they don't want to hear all this kind of stuff. Nobody is going to tell this kind of, so you've got to negotiate. So then I told my boss, look, Freetown, it's not the place where you're going to be able to do it, because the real power is actually a man called Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was the president of Liberia, big time crook over there, and he was the mastermind of all the rebellion in West Africa. Liberia was already broken down. There was a revolution, the country was already in shambles. He was also directing the revolution in Sierra Leone. He was also directing the revolution in Guinea-Bissau and a few other places. So I said, if we need to negotiate, I have to negotiate with Charles Taylor, not with Hode Sanko, who is the head of the Revolutionary United Front in Sierra Leone. So Dato' Halim asked me, so how do you propose to do it? Well, I said, this is going to be the first time I got to negotiate this on the phone, because I can't travel to Liberia also, war zone. So he said, well, how do you propose to do it? I said, well, I'll draft a letter from Dr. Mahathir, that was Dr. Mahathir those days, to Charles Taylor, telling him that, you got our people there, all the kind of niceties, etc. And then I said, you get it signed by PM Mahathir and send it back to me. I will send it to Charles Taylor, and I'll try and negotiate this thing, So I'm sure none of you have ever heard a negotiation by telephone, right? In your mind, your vision about negotiation is face to face, very grim looking diplomat, tie, suit, across the table, flag, all these things. None of that sort here, on the phone. So I sent the fax over to, at that time still fax line, no email. Anyway, nothing was working in Liberia anyway. So I sent the fax over. Then I called the presidency. So the person who answered the phone was the vice president. His name was Enoch Dugolia. You can Google it later, because Charles Taylor murdered him a few years later. So Enoch Dogulia told me, sir, we don't have any Malaysians, we have the Fode Sanko, who's the Sierra Leone's, they've got a bunch of other peoples, maybe some Indians and Africans, but no Malaysians. No, sir, we don't have. No, sir. They talk like Africans, American. You know, by the way, Liberia is made up of freed American slaves, right? Did you know that? You didn't know that, right? After the Civil War ended in America, President Lincoln had signed the Order of Emancipation, right? So then American slaves were free. So many of them were told that you are now free, you can go back. So America sent boatloads of them to Africa to start a new country. So those days, the white man mentality is any place around the world is uninhabited. So you can just simply go there, plant your flag and continue to be considered yourself a country. So the Africans went there, slaves, they went and planted a flag in the part now which is known as Liberia, and they called it Liberia. If you look at the flag, and all of them American names, Charles Taylor, for example, you know. So then he said, no, but anyway, he said, can we talk tomorrow? So the next day when I called up, it was Charles Taylor himself. Charles Taylor said, no, sir, we don't have any Malaysians. We have verified there are a few Indians and Africans and a bunch of others. And I was telling myself, yeah, because among the three Malaysians, one was an Indian fellow, Major Ganesh, and two other Malays. But the Malays also look very burnt and brown. Told him, no, sir, we have these Malaysians, they somehow may look like Indians as well, so you may not have recognized. And then he suddenly said, oh yeah, by the way, we have a Malaysian team helping us rebuild the port of Buchanan. Again, remember American name, you know, Buchanan, President Buchanan, they named the port. And I was telling myself in my head, bloody hell, there's nobody, no Malaysian in Buchanan, port of Buchanan there, you know. No Malaysian would ever go to Liberia to do anything there, for sure, because it's a war, right? But Malaysia actually owned the rubber estate in Liberia. We still have it. Out of Goodyear. So since he said there are a Malaysian team repairing Port of Buchanan, I thought maybe I should just play along with it, like, you know. Maybe who knows, I can get some kudos out of it. So I said, yeah, that's right. We've got some Malaysians there. And I tell you what, Mr. President, if you were to release these three Malaysians, we'll be much happy to come and maybe invest more and do more of your repairs in your, not only Port of Buchanan, but maybe Port of Monrovia as well. So the man was quite excited. Oh yeah, Malaysians, yeah, if they can be excited, you know, if they can do the Port of Buchanan, I'm sure we can get some Malaysians to come and invest in Liberia and all this kind of stuff. So I said, have you seen the letter from Dr. Mahathir? He said, yeah, I saw it. And I said, give me a day, I'll come back to you. So the next day I called him, again, Charles Taylor. He said, well, yeah, you're right. It seems that a mistake has been made. They have accidentally kidnapped 3 of your men. Finally, after the 3rd day, you know. So I was telling him, yay, negotiations complete. I can go back and claim, you know, that, you know, Kedutaan Besar Malaysia sudah berjaya. You know? So then he dropped the bombshell. He said they'll be released in 5 days. I was wondering whether I should ask him, why 5 days? I mean, if they're released, like, you know, just say, done. Then I thought maybe I shouldn't do too much, you know. I just reported back to Dato' Alim, and Dato' Alim, of course, jumped and same thing again. What do you mean 5 days? You know? So I say, Dato', look, if I were to go and press him, he'd probably say, you want or not? We don't want, we'll just cancel the whole thing, like, you know, you can continue to have your man with us for the next 3 years. I said, let us wait 5 days and see what happens. True enough, 5 days later, they were released. Many years later, I found out why 5 days. You want to know why 5 days? Because there's no communication between the capital and where the rebels are. No walkie-talkie, no telephone, no nothing of the sort. He has to give a verbal communication to the soldier has to run. It will take him 5 days to get, it will take, one soldier runs 40 kilometers, 40 kilometers stop. Next soldier takes 40, 45, 200 kilometers down south. That's how the message gets to them. So it takes 5 days. So it's very easy, they can calculate. If you have 200 kilometers away, 5 days. My man can do only 40 kilometers a day. By the way, if you're ever in a war zone, you know the rebels are fighting, make sure that you are at least 40 kilometers away from them. If you do not want to be caught in the fire. This is something that I learned while living in Conakry, because there was a war going on and the war might come every day. Why 40 kilometers? Because by the war machinery, soldiers have to move, they have to stop, camp, eat, all the things. They do only about 40 kilometers a day. So if you are 40 kilometers or more from where the fighting is, then you are safe. If you are within the 20 kilometer, 30 kilometer range, you better get out from that place, because you can be caught in the crossfire that particular time. Useless information, right? Because in Malaysia nothing happens, right? But then it's curiously interesting. But that's the second negotiation that I had. So far the negotiation I've described to you doesn't sound like a real negotiation, right? But this is a problematic negotiation because one, you got TV already blaring your name, face also put there already some more, so you have to deliver the whole thing. So finally I understood from my parents that they announced that, oh, sudah selesai masalah, that kind of stuff. And then the three soldiers were reunited. They were happily met by the crying families, etc., and everything settled, fine. So that was in 1998. But let me go back to another negotiation. But this is yet another type of negotiation, very different too. This happened in 1991, earlier. Again in Africa too. Africa is a fantastic place for any of these things to happen, because that's where all the things that you don't expect can happen. This was just after I had returned from Paris. I was assigned to the Africa desk. I was the principal assistant secretary or the senior assistant secretary for Africa. And Mahathir at that time loved to travel all around the world, and many of the countries he traveled to was Africa. Since I was the desk officer, I have to travel with him to all those places in that continent. And I have to travel ahead of him, of course. And this was the very first time I'm traveling with him to Africa, and my first trip to Africa anyway. So I bought myself a nice African looking kind of a shirt, like safari kind of a shirt, thinking that, hey, this is a real cool, thing. Never been to Africa. No one has been to Africa that I know. None of my friends, nobody from the family. First time. And this was to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, 1991. Country was just coming out of communism. Places. I had already been there 2 weeks in advance of him. Mahathir arrives, because I have to be there because we need to negotiate all the preparation, plans, etc. Those days the Prime Minister used to fly in an aircraft called Falcon 900. Not like our Prime Ministers these days. They fly in very big Boeing. They can carry 100 people, all the kinds of stuff. Those days was Falcon 900. It can carry only 12 people. 9 people, I think seating capacity about 15. Pilot, crew, etc. Prime Minister and team arrives, we were there, the program going on. Next day, Prime Minister's program involves going to visit a game reserve called Ngorongoro Reserve. You might have heard of Serengeti, right? Serengeti and Ngorongoro are actually the same. Serengeti is on the Kenyan side. It's a meteor crater, very big crater, over 1 million square kilometers, but shared between two countries. The Kenyan side is more famous because everybody's spoken about it. National Geographic has reported, so you would have heard Serengeti, but you would not have heard the word Ngorongoro. That is on the Tanzanian side, and that is where Mahathir was visiting. So he had gone. Next day, of course, I'm left alone back in the capital because everybody can't go with the Prime Minister. The pilot is a Malaysian Air Force pilot. So morning, his job is going to test the plane, make sure there is a running order, because PM is supposed to come back the next day, the following day is supposed to fly off. But 10 o'clock in the morning, he comes running to see me, he says, sir, we have a problem. So then I said, okay, what is the problem? He said, the plane won't start. I said, oh my God, why? Oh, well, okay, why doesn't the plane start? He said, no, we don't know why it won't start, but we have also tried to investigate ourselves. We put out the busing. Busing, for your information, is where you put your luggage on the aircraft there, right? The panel below it, beneath the panel, actually wiring. You can actually remove the panel and you can see the wirings. They run all along the plane. He said we opened the busing and we saw that the whole circuitry had melted and fused together. So the plane is definitely not going to fly. No way. I would say, oh bloody hell, it's my first time to Africa. Why does this have to happen to me here? Prime Minister has to go. How the hell am I going to deal with this kind of stuff? Because there's no embassy there. Again, you're traveling. Those days you got to go with cash, Already gone there and all stuff. Plane was already, now no choice. I have to call the boss. The boss is the same Dato' Ali. He had Halim Ali, who had gone with the PM and the gang to Moro Park. Those days, no telephone, no internet, no email, no cell phone, nothing of the sort, right? And this country got no telephone also, by the way. So you have to call with a satellite phone. Satellite phone, those days it looks like a big thing, I don't know, like a brick. Ato, something like Ato, yeah, like that size. And then it has, the satellite phone has got long antenna, it's something like about 4 feet long. You got to it's flip thing and you got to pull it out. And you got to find some very clear spot out there in the, wherever it is, and then call, hello, that kind of thing, and because the person there can't hear. Hello, can you hear? Dato, hello. And then finally answered, yeah, Ilan, what's the problem? Dato, there's a problem here. Remember, this is the same person gave me instruction to release the people by 8 years down the road. This was much earlier. The pilot told me the plane won't start. So why are you telling me this? So I'm telling you this because it means that the delegation won't be able to fly. Okay, Ilan, listen. Let me tell you this. The PM, we are coming back tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, PM has to be in London because he's got a meeting with. So Dato' Alim said, look, PM has to be there. So when I come back, I don't want to hear anything else except that we are going to fly to London. So I'll tell you, this really gave me a nightmare. I mean, you imagine you are in Konak, Dar es Salaam, far away. You got just 2 guys with you and a whole lot of people out there, PM no less, waiting to fly. Your aircraft Rosa cannot fly. So I said, okay, no textbook, nothing. Okay, let's go check out what to do. Let's go to the airport to find out what kind of airlines are flying. So zoom, as I told you, no telephone, go straight to the airport. Found out Swiss Air, now bankrupt already, right? Swiss Air was the only flight that was flying the following day. Thank God they had a flight to London. So I said, okay, thank you. We want 9 first class seats because all of them are first class people. They said, no, the flight is all full. First class, all full. But we can give you 9 economy seats. 1 here, 1 there, 1 near the toilet, 1 in the front there, that kind of stuff. I ask all of you to put yourself in that situation. You got the Prime Minister and his wife and 7 other senior people having to fly, and this aircraft says that no first class, I've got only 9 seats, economy, all scattered all over. What will you do? Grab it. So you've got a lot of suddenly wondering. Definitely, if the economy class is out, right? No way you can take it because you can't tell Dato' Alim that I've managed to get a 9 economy class. They'll probably tell you, thank you very much, this is the last day in service. You can go back and do whatever else you want to do. They would have packed me off. So you got to talk to the Swiss Air people. The Swiss Air says, look sir, this is once a week only. The next flight is another week later. No other flight the day after also. So there's no option of telling the PM that stay 1 more day and try to wing it out. No. So you got to negotiate to get them to release some first class seats. If you're negotiating 1 first class seat, is not a very difficult thing, doable. 2 boleh juga lah, But 9 is a darn near impossible task. And worse, because when the PM flies, he doesn't sit any first class seat. It must be 1A, 1B, the first two. He has wife, and then behind him will be the doctor, and then ADC, and there's a certain protocol arrangement. It has to be like that. So you need to have specific first class seats taken up, not just any first class seat near the back door toilet there, pun tak boleh. So negotiating over first class seats which are fully booked, you got to find out how to do it. I tell you, this was the most harrowing experience of my life. Finally managed to get it, all the 9 seats. Next day, the delegation arrives. So Dato Halim comes and looks at me, Ilan, all okay? I said, yes sir, all done. Your flight's all booked, you're flying to London tomorrow by Swiss Air. Good, that's the spirit. Didn't ask how you did it, nothing, because that's how the foreign ministry works. That's how it works, you know. You are just left to your devices. So the next day we put them onto the flight and everything, and then just before he said, okay, before they flew, he said, okay Ilan, but you stay back. Make sure that that aircraft is airborne before you leave. Leaving me with another bombshell. Now I've got to repair the Falcon 900, which I have no clue how the hell to repair. If it was my car, I can take it to Sungai Besi or someone, or somebody come and tow and get Achong to come and repair it, for example. But here, who the hell do I do, you know? So then you realize, okay, let's do the homework. We find out that this is made by the French. So Dassault things, of course. Now I'm doing my newly minted master's degree in French. So I blasted out my French, la la la, and all that kind of stuff. And the guys want to say, oh la la, c'est grave, c'est terrible, no, no, no. So again, you know, basically what they were saying is that we are not going to tell you anything on the phone, make us come to your place. So there you start another whole series of paying for them to come, and then they look at again, oh la la, again, oh, c'est problème, ça la la, and all that. So it was a whole 3 weeks of oh la la, no problem. Staying back to try and repair this aircraft. Money was not a problem at that time. I had that at my disposal. How much time? 5 more minutes. Listed down with one last thing. This thing is the most difficult negotiation of all negotiations, but again a very different type. I was already in Washington DC as minister. This another 10 years down the road. Obama had become president. I was there representing Malaysia in the inauguration and all this thing. One day I get a call from a father from Johor. My staff got it. Father was distraught, saying, my daughter has run away from home. She's on a flight to Boston. Please save her. I crying on the phone. I tell you, it was, you know, and the flight was already there in the air. The girl is in the flight already. The father was in Johor. He had sent the girl to Singapore to study. 17 years old. Got a room for her. She fell in love with somebody from the Facebook. And the guy promised to love her, marry her. You know the story, right? So she decided to go. Got herself a passport, which she shouldn't have been given, by the way. Got herself a ticket, and she took a flight. And by the time the father called, the flight was already 3 hours in the flight. Another 6 more hours, or another 5 more hours before she arrives. Father's calling, please help. I could have easily taken the easy way out, which most Malaysian diplomats would have done anyway. Apa saya nak buat? You know, nantilah kita dia ada tunggu datang, nanti kita ambil laporan, kita nanti akan menyiasat dan so and so lah, the usual. I was telling myself, no, this cannot be it. I mean, this is, if I were the father, how would you feel? Because for sure I knew the girl is not going to end up well. So got the names and all these things, and I told the State Department that when I said that, suddenly the entire mechanism in America comes into play. Pam, you know, the State Department says, they call up, now Homeland Security guys comes in, FBI guys comes in, all racing to the embassy, you know. So we say, okay, this is the plan. The girl is going to arrive in Boston, I'm going to arrive in Washington DC. What we'll do is that we'll take the girl out, pull her outside, make sure she doesn't take the flight to Boston. We will try and do something to see how we can save the girl. So I told the father, look, we need to reroute her ticket. We are going to change the ticket flight back to Malaysia. Government doesn't have the money, so please let us have your credit card so we can charge it to your card. Got the card details, etc. Rerouted the flight from Washington DC to Narita, Narita to Johor, without the girl knowing. I'm telling you, in negotiation, this cannot be done. Huh? This, when you put yourself in the situation, this is actually a darn near impossible task, because first of all, you cannot tell whether the person is on the flight, because the manifest is a secret document. But with Americans, everything is possible. Exactly who the person is, where the girl is, and then we told the name of the guy, the lover in Boston was waiting for her. They checked out and said, yeah, this is someone that we've also been looking at for a few years, So it's quite clear that guy was there, and it was up to no good. So the moment she arrived, I told this guy, the State Department, the Homeland and the FBI, I said, look, this is a young girl, 17-year-old girl. If all of you go there, the girl will be, of course, terrified. Why don't I send my officer, who's a Malay woman lady, much better because she's a matronly kind of woman, she's much better. So yeah, we'll do that. Let your woman officer go there and talk, and we will be standing in the background. But when the thing happens, nothing of the sort. They just push aside the woman. They themselves went there, grabbed the girl, put the girl was terrified, the girl was crying. She was saying, no, this is my right, etc. We said, oh, thank you very much. You're not quite 18 yet, so you don't have the rights. So we are going to put you back onto the flight. So then we announced to the girl, look, sorry, your father has called us, and we have decided, we've checked it out. The guy who promised you is up to no good. Confirmed, definitely. Of course, the girl wouldn't believe, she thought that we were standing in the way of true love. So I called up our people in Tokyo. We told them, look, you guys, when the flight arrives, make sure that you all are there as well. Make sure the girl doesn't go and cabut, get another flight or whatever, Make sure you put her back onto the flight so that she gets back to Malaysia. So then that's how it happened. So the girl came back, and we told the father, your girl is now on the flight. She is now headed back to Johor. The rest is up to you. But this negotiation was a very different type of negotiation, right? Not the normal kind of negotiation that you think about. It involves many players, practically impossible situation, because I don't have to do it actually. I did not have to do it that way, because none of the paperwork said I've got to do this. But again, empathy comes into mind. So the girl will be about 34 years today. I hope she's happy and found a real love. Well, I've been told to stop, so I've got plenty of stories, as you can imagine, but I will save them for another day. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you so much.
I'm sure Dato has got a lot of stories to say.